My name is Mark Hobart, and together with my colleague Kola here, we are presenting a test video number 10, which is Unmasking the Truth. This is part 1, which is the skill of critical thinking. There's actually 4 parts to this presentation in video 10. Critical thinking is the first, then we'll look at what is truth. The third part is the fog of crisis, and the fourth part is just all the references that I'm using in these first 3 parts. There's a summary, search index of the references that are also at the end of this video. Catastrophic thinking is to formulate public policies to guide us through before, during, and after a catastrophe. To formulate such policies requires us to implement them using critical thinking and recognizing what is truth. We are faced with many confusing assertions, especially in times of crisis. So, some of the elements that we'll cover here are the key is critical thinking, skepticism, using smart questions, the references below, models, systems. We have to learn how to separate truth from every other form of assertion, which I will introduce as the skill of labeling in part 2. But let's begin with critical thinking. Critical thinking is a process, a discipline, a holistic approach to thinking, to make reasoned, sound, informed conclusions. We draw on all sorts of skills of thinking, using systems, models, and also questioning every step of the way. I have a list of 10 characteristics of critical thinking here, which we'll go through. First one is clear your mind of clutter. This is a summary of many of these references about critical thinking. Your clutter is the 300 some fallacies that we harbor in our mind, in our logics. 188 cognitive biases. There's the cognitive bias pinwheel down there, also available in the store on YouTube, on my website. There's also a couple videos I've already prepared called It's All About You, and then Hey, look, a squirrel. These are all some examples of cognitive biases. The Dunning-Kruger effect, which is that we all think we're a lot smarter than we are, including experts. The limitations of memory and perceptions, and assumptions about adversity or scarcity. You got to be more realistic that when things go wrong, lots of adversity, lots of scarcity issues arise. The second element of critical thinking that I've distilled from all these books is consider all perspectives and stakeholders. Set aside beliefs and faiths, because what we're doing is a consensus that applies to everyone, regardless of faith. We have to recognize that all good policies are opposed by the selfish interest groups. Anticipate arguments, strengthen your view based on what they want. So you have to listen to the other side to know what they're saying. You want to be a coach, not a player. Consider everything from the perspective of the woman from Mars. Every discipline will see it differently. The third element is embrace risk and uncertainties. Your problem isn't about death or taxes. Think in terms of probabilities. Everything you do is a probability. Statistics are not. I have the joke in the Catastrophic humor. It says one of the funniest phrases is statistical certainty. There is no such thing. For example, you say the plane will arrive at 7 o'clock. Okay, is it going to arrive at 6:55? There's a distribution of probable times when the plane will actually arrive, and you're only suggesting the median or mean. It could not arrive. It could arrive tomorrow, or it might never arrive. Summon your inner Vulcan. A key element of critical thinking is to apply logic, study the skill and art of reasoning, shun emotions, recognize heuristics and rules of thumb for what they are, They are based on some rules of thumb. Some heuristics are based on wisdom and observation and trial and error. Get to the root of it. Is it well grounded or not? Learn from experience. Why the Vulcans are peaceful? They learned from war. Be mindful of all the virtues of analysis. They're listed here. Things that you would say about a well-reasoned piece of information, accuracy, autonomy, clarity, completeness, and so on. Be curious, skeptical, and ask smart questions. Some of those questioning references are down below. Always think in probabilities. We don't even know what we don't know, according to Donald Rumsfeld. To develop skeptical thinking, read the history books listed in references and see if you can spot what is an assertion and what is a fact. Weigh and label assertions. In part 2, I'm going to discuss what is truth. Even if the assertion is not truth, it often relied on. For example, a political poll, is not truth. It is an estimation or guesstimate of what the truth will be. Even partial truths or untruths have varying degrees of usefulness in policy formation, but you have to develop the skill to recognize what the assertion is and how much weight it deserves in your thinking and in policy formation. Use a thinking framework. There's many of them out there. I've got a few of them here. Do a Google search for systems or models. Develop a basic framework to help organize your thoughts. And here they are. Number 1, recognize the problem. Ask the questions who, what, when, where, and why. Gather information on observations and then identify the variables. Form a hypothesis. Define the universe. Be aware of the 40 types of dubious data, statistics, experiment and test. Tests fail to support, then go back to 3 and start over. If the tests support the hypothesis, make conclusions and publish it. Test conclusions with caveat. Caveat is a catastrophe, is catastrophic assumptions, values, and expectations in analysis and thinking. Always analyze in terms of the worst case scenario. Is the policy resilient? Is it sustainable? Is it funded? Is it logistically sound? Find exceptions to prove or disprove the rule. The exceptions prove the rule. What are the limits to the theories, hypothesis, and policy being tested? The vowels are, here's an example. The vowels are listed as A, E, I, O, U, and sometimes Y and W. When I was in grade school, I asked the teacher, what's a word that has the W as a vowel? Couldn't think of any, neither could she, and ultimately I came across one. It's cwm, C-W-M. It's a Welsh word meaning a depression or a hollow in the hillside. I before E except after C. You heard that rule? Well, here are feisty, heist, weird, beige, foreign, neighbors, forfeit, wait, 8, heirs, and about 3,800 others that don't follow the rule. You know, the rest of the rule, if you read the whole thing in a grammar book, I before E except after C, only to words where the IE makes the double E sound. Invite challenges, criticism, and contradictions. We saw so little of this during the pandemic of 2020, which I'll get to in the fog of crisis, because they weren't inviting challenges, criticism, and contradictions. That's not science. Real science invites it. The key element of policies are audits, reviews, examinations, inspections, and assessments. Things nobody likes, but that's why they're there. The red flag of fraud and deceit, oops, another exception, is anyone who objects to the audit. If you object to an audit, you're probably crooked. Force the question why. Critical thinking prepares you to be able to answer challenges, criticisms, and contradictions because you've looked at them, you've addressed them in advance. Never cease the process. Rebuttals, self-appraisals, testing the results. The variables are infinite. Keep honing and improving the policies and theory and hypotheses. Truth is absolute, but our poor efforts to define it is only an approximation, whether we're talking about science, the law, and certainly policies. The scope of critical thinking skills ranges from everything from skepticism to problem solving in every field of endeavor, in every academic discipline, in every form of thinking. Essential concept is catastrophic thinking, is critical thinking. First, look at skepticism, skill that takes practice. Critical thinking and skepticism is a reinforcing feedback loop. Many books are on asking the right questions. Practice using history books. And I have them at the end. Some book, lies my teacher told me, the murder of history, things like that. Second, problem solving. See the references on problem solving at the end. Organized and structured thinking is an analytical skill, strategic, goal achieving, and winning thinking. Examples could be very simple, like SWOT, look at a problem and try to figure out what your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities and threats are, or use the scientific method. Pick your framework, and there's several listed here. Six Sigma practice, logic trees, TRIZ, the inventive problem solving, pros and cons, benefit analysis. All frameworks use these tools of deductive and inductive reasoning. There's a variety of them here. Think outside your box. I've got some books up here on thinking outside the box. Catastrophic thinking is critical thinking. In an era of misinformation, identifying which assertions are true and which are not, or partially, is an essential concept in policy formation. Now comes part two, the skill of labeling, to recognize what is truth by labeling fiction and everything in between. And then I have my appendix. And then I have the references. And I'll end every video the same way, with a prayer for peace. Thank you.